The Honeymooners brought audiences into the humorous world of bus driver Ralph Cramden and his best friend Ed Norton with their funny arguments in Brooklyn. But behind the laughter lay the heartbreaking tragedies of the actors: sudden deaths, terminal illnesses, and countless addictions. Let us explore the truth and pay tribute to the legacy they left behind. Let's go. Jackie Gleason as Ralph Cramden. Jackie Gleason, born Herbert Walton Gleason, Jr. on February 26, 1916 in Brooklyn, New York, was a legendary performer known for his bold comedic style and explosive personality. At the age of 39, he became a nationwide star thanks to his role as Ralph Cramden, a hot-tempered but honest and warm-hearted bus driver, always dreaming of a better life in the series The Honeymooners, 1955. The character of Cramden was closely tied to the American working class, creating a powerful and enduring appeal among audiences. Additionally, Gleason made an impressive appearance in the film Ben-Hur, 1959, in a small but charming supporting role, showing his versatility on the big screen, even though his most notable mark remained in television comedy. Jackie Gleason's life, however, was filled with painful shades. His father disappeared when Jackie was only 9 years old, leaving behind his mother and 2 brothers in utter poverty. The tragedy did not end there. His brother Clement died of meningitis at the age of 14, and his mother, exhausted and worn down, passed away before Gleason turned 20, leaving him with a deep emptiness. These dark corners of childhood forged in him a reckless attitude and a downward spiraling lifestyle. Strong liquor, 6 packs of cigarettes a day, endless nights surrounded by smoke and alcohol became his companions, leaving Gleason struggling for decades. These instabilities quickly spread to his personal life. Gleason married Genevieve Halford in 1936 and had 2 daughters, but their 22-year marriage was filled with repeated separations, reconciliations, and then breakups marked by suspicion, betrayal, and fracture. After their divorce, he went through 2 more marriages, but none of these relationships truly brought him peace. In the eyes of his children, Gleason was both a great monument and a distant, hot-tempered, and turbulent father, leaving behind a gap that could never be healed. The pressure of fame, along with a smoldering loneliness, deepened the wounds in his heart, wounds that even the stage lights could not soothe. In 1986, while filming Nothing in Common, Gleason discovered he had colon cancer that had metastasized to his liver, in addition to complications from diabetes, phlebitis, and a weakened heart after so many years of damage from alcohol and tobacco. Though he tried to hide his illness, he quickly deteriorated and died on June 24, 1987 in Florida at the age of 71. His funeral was held solemnly in Miami, with the farewell words engraved on his tomb. And away we go, like a proud ending for a life that was both glorious and tragic. His net worth, estimated at around 10 million USD, was left to his family, the fruit of decades of dedication on stage, screen, and in the recording studio, the immense legacy of a talented giant who forever carried many scars in his soul. Art Carney as Ed Norton. Arthur William Matthew Carney, born on November 4, 1918 in Mount Vernon, New York, was one of the most talented actors and comedians of the 20th century. In 1955, at the age of 37, he transformed into Ed Norton, a goofy but kind-hearted sewer worker who always stood side by side with his friend Ralph Cramden in the sitcom The Honeymooners. The image of Norton, silly yet loyal, became one of American television's immortal icons, earning Carney 6 prestigious Emmy Awards. Yet behind the spotlight, Carney's life was filled with pains difficult to put into words. As the youngest child in a large family, Carney witnessed his parents' hardships early on, and later had to wear a soldier's uniform on the battlefields of World War II. During the Normandy campaign, he was struck by shrapnel in the leg, leaving a permanent injury that made his right leg shorter than his left, forcing him to walk with a limp for the rest of his life. That injury tormented him not only physically but also mentally, pushing Carney into depression and leading him to alcohol, barbiturates, and then amphetamines to numb the pain, sowing the seeds of addiction at a very young age. Successive wounds kept coming when, in the 1960s, his son passed away, plunging Carney into a profound crisis and long-lasting depression. His first marriage to Jean Myers, which had lasted since high school, seemingly solid, also fell apart in 1965 due to the pressures of fame and addiction. Sometime later, Carney married his second wife, Barbara Isaac, but they eventually divorced as well, before he returned to Jean and reunited with her in 1980 as a late effort to salvage some peace. Even so, the wounds of war, family loss, and loneliness always haunted him, shaping a temperamental nature and driving him many times to seek psychological treatment. In his twilight years, Carney still resiliently appeared in film projects, winning an Oscar for his role as Harry in Harry and Tonto, 1974, but his health gradually declined. He died on November 9, 2003, at the age of 85, in a nursing home in Connecticut, closing a life of dedication yet filled with turbulence. His net worth at the time of his passing was estimated at about $5 million USD, a worthy number for the talent and perseverance of an artist who was loved all over the world and who now rests forever beside his ex-wife, who was also his final soulmate, at Riverside Cemetery, bidding farewell to a heart bearing many scars, but never ceasing to beat for the love of the stage. Audrey Meadows as Alice Cramden. Audrey Meadows, born Audrey Cotter on February 8, 1922 in New York, was one of the brightest faces on American television in the 1950s. In 1955, at the age of 33, she transformed into Alice Cramden, a smart, sharp, outspoken yet loving wife who always knew how to rein in her hot-tempered husband Ralph in The Honeymooners. Audrey's portrayal of Alice not only brought laughter but also depicted the strength of the everyday American woman, leaving her with a timeless mark on the small screen. Audrey's childhood was far from a bed of roses. As the youngest child in a family whose parents had been missionaries in China, she had to witness her father's early death and her mother struggling to raise 4 children through a difficult life. Her 2 brothers passed away one after another, leaving a large emptiness in the young girl's heart, pushing Audrey early on to nurture a strong determination to break through the barriers of fate and step onto the Broadway stage and later into television. Although praised for her talent, her journey was not without tears. She had to work hard to shed the too beautiful image in order to land the role of Alice, by making herself look more plain, sacrificing the pride of a rising star. Audrey's private life was not without turbulence. Her 2 marriages, first to businessman Robert F. Six, then to director Joseph G. Manowitz, both ended without fulfillment, as lingering conflicts and emotional distance gradually eroded the bonds. Audrey had 2 children, but the pressures of fame and a busy schedule often caused cracks in family relationships, leaving a loneliness that haunted her in later years. In her final years, Audrey lived a rather secluded life, especially after the death of her second husband, making her feel even more lost in a world that had once cheered her so much. A lifelong smoking habit from her youth finally sowed the seeds of disaster. In 1995, Audrey was diagnosed with lung cancer and refused aggressive treatment, accepting only palliative care. She passed away in a coma on February 3, 1996, just 5 days before her 74th birthday, closing a journey full of glory but also much sorrow. With a net worth of around $3 million USD thanks to her role as Alice Cramden and many other television programs, Audrey Meadows left behind a precious artistic legacy, a monument to the strong, resilient woman that audiences will never forget. Joyce Randolph as Trixie Norton. Joyce Randolph, born Joyce Cirola on October 21, 1924 in Detroit, was an actress of Finnish descent, once nicknamed the Garbo of Detroit for her gentle, reserved beauty. In 1955, at the age of 31, she shot to fame playing Thelma Trixie Norton, the smart, quick-witted, and somewhat mischievous wife of Ed Norton in The Honeymooners, bringing laughter and a breath of realism to the portrait of the American working-class family at that time. The image of Trixie was deeply engraved in the audience's memory, making Randolph an indispensable part of television history. Alongside the spotlight, Joyce also carried hidden corners that were not easy to share. Coming from a struggling immigrant family, she had to be independent early on, once working as a sales clerk at Saks before getting the chance to join touring theater productions. When Jackie Gleason discovered her through a television commercial, Joyce's life opened a new path, but at the same time locked her into the image of Trixie. This role typecast her, with many directors refusing to give her other parts because she was too familiar, stifling the creative dreams of an actress who had once longed for the Broadway stage. Her family life partly made up for these losses. Randolph married businessman Richard Albrecht and had one son, enjoying a peaceful home life for decades. However, witnessing her close colleagues like Jackie Gleason, Art Carney, and Audrey Meadows pass away one by one, Randolph seemed to be overwhelmed by a constant sense of loss. She chose to live quietly, limiting communication, retreating into her own world, a way to preserve the beautiful memories but also to carry the loneliness of seeing her glorious days fade farther and farther away. Joyce Randolph passed away on January 13, 2024, at her private apartment on the Upper West Side, Manhattan, at the age of 99. She left peacefully of natural causes, closing a long life deeply intertwined with the legacy of the Honeymooners. Her net worth was estimated at around $1 million USD, mostly thanks to her role as Trixie and a few later reappearances. A testament to the perseverance and love of the profession, even while bearing the sadness of being defined by the very character that made her name. Eddie Kane as Mr. Monahan. Eddie Kane, born on August 12, 1889 in St. Louis, Missouri, was a veteran performer with a strong voice and a strikingly theatrical face. In 1956, at the age of 67, he appeared in The Honeymooners as Mr. Monahan, the strict boss of Ralph Cramden at Gotham Bus Company, bringing an air of authority and an interesting contrast to Ralph's impulsive nature. Although the role was brief, it left a mark, adding to a legacy of more than 250 film and stage productions that Kane dedicated his life to. Behind the stage lights, Eddie Kane faced many wounds that could not be healed. Coming from a family that was far from wealthy, he had to struggle through vaudeville to survive in a harsh world before gradually transitioning to talking films as Hollywood boomed. His up-and-down career forced him to work relentlessly, especially during difficult economic times, just to avoid falling into poverty. These financial pressures, combined with a broken marriage, left behind a quiet sadness that fame could never fully ease. In the final years of his career, he continued to appear in major films such as It's a Wonderful Life, Yankee Doodle Dandy, and The Ten Commandments, but his roles became increasingly minor, forcing him to accept stepping back from the spotlight. He did not succumb to alcohol or addiction, but Eddie's spirit was still worn down by the harsh pace of the entertainment industry and the pileup of personal losses. That made him into an image both admirable and tragic, an artist dedicated to the point of exhaustion. On April 30th, 1969, Eddie Kane passed away at his home in Los Angeles from a heart attack at the age of 79. His net worth was only around $500,000 USD. Modest compared to his massive career, but still enough to reflect the tireless efforts of an actor who always gave his best on stage and screen, closing a rough journey with a quiet farewell to the spotlight he had embraced for nearly half a century. Eddie Hanley as telephone installer. Eddie Hanley, born on May 17, 1904, was a quiet yet passionate actor devoted to countless supporting roles in American television and film. In 1955, at the age of 51, he made a brief appearance in The Honeymooners as a telephone installer, a small part but enough for audiences to remember his rustic and subtle charm amid the waves of laughter. Though not a prominent face, Eddie still left an impression thanks to his seriousness and dedication to every moment on screen. Hanley's life, away from the studio lights, carried many wounds difficult to erase. His first wife passed away from a terminal illness while the two were still trying to build their happiness, leaving a deep shock that threw Hanley into a state of despair, lost, and nearly closed off from the world. Later, he remarried with the hope of finding peace again. But his second marriage also quickly fell apart as emotional pressures mounted, compounded by a career that had begun to stall. Though he did not fall into addiction, Hanley still had to struggle with loneliness and financial hardships as the entertainment industry changed too quickly, leaving him with fewer roles and unstable income. That instability only deepened his sense of isolation, especially as friends and colleagues gradually moved away or passed on, leaving Hanley to face old age alone. On March 29, 1997, Eddie Hanley died in Los Angeles at the age of 92, closing a life filled with many low notes but still overflowing with love for his craft. His net worth was estimated at about $400,000 USD, a modest figure but enough to reflect the perseverance and unyielding spirit of an actor who quietly gave so much for decades, even if the final reward was only a few small but genuine, heartfelt roles. George Petrie as Fred. George O. Petrie, born on November 16, 1912 in New Haven, Connecticut, was a familiar face in American television for half a century. In 1955, at the age of 43, he appeared in The Honeymooners as Fred, a supporting character with a strong presence, bringing depth and authenticity to the everyday picture painted by this legendary sitcom. Petrie, who came up through stage theater and radio, always brought a polished, steady style to any role he was given. Yet behind his calm appearance, George Petrie experienced no shortage of pain. Coming from a poor background, he had to work from a young age to help support his family, carrying the burden of survival from his teenage years. Those psychological wounds from childhood left lasting marks, making Petrie prone to stimulants and alcohol, something he later admitted had repeatedly sabotaged his professional opportunities as well as his personal relationships. His first marriage ended bitterly, pushing Petrie into a long period of estrangement from his children, which left him with lingering guilt and deep loneliness. Nevertheless, he managed to rise again, seizing every role from The Edge of Night, Dallas, to countless other famous shows, determined to protect his reputation and his passion for the arts. Petrie never gave up, even as old age arrived along with lymphoma, which severely weakened his health. The long battle with illness was the harsh final chapter of an artist who had once fought to shine on stage, but could never quite escape the shadows inside himself. On November 16, 1997, on his 85th birthday, George Petrie took his last breath in Los Angeles. His net worth was estimated at about $600,000 USD, mostly accumulated from television and film contracts over more than 50 years, as a powerful testament to a man who overcame countless hardships to make his name in American television history, even if his life had never been free of bitterness. Frank Marth as Barney Dibble. Frank Marth, born on July 29, 1922 in Washington Heights, Manhattan, was a tall actor with light-colored hair and a serious look, who left his mark on audiences through countless strong and memorable supporting roles. In 1955, at the age of 33, he appeared in The Honeymooners as Barney Dibble, a supporting character with a tough appearance, enriching the colorful world of the Cramden family. The image of Barney, stern yet genuine, became a striking detail among those classic comedic scenes. Marth's youth was far from easy. He came from a working-class family and worked in construction before falling in love with the stage after World War II. Studying acting while struggling to make a living, Frank shed a lot of sweat and tears to hold on to the profession, gradually proving himself on local stages and then moving into television and film. His personal life also bore many wounds, as his first marriage broke apart after the devastating loss of a child through miscarriage, leaving a spiritual emptiness that could never be filled. Trying to turn the page, Marth remarried, but still faced many obstacles as illness began to surround both him and his wife, along with financial hardship as his career gradually declined in old age. The diseases of old age, especially depression, often left him exhausted both physically and mentally, despite once being loved by audiences through hit shows like Hogan's Heroes, Mission Impossible, Perry Mason, and Dallas. Frank Marth passed away on January 12, 2014, in Rancho Mirage, California, at the age of 91 after battling congestive heart failure and Alzheimer's disease. His net worth was estimated at about $700,000 USD, mostly from decades of tireless dedication to television and theater. A modest figure compared to his talent and determination, but still enough to immortalize the image of a devoted artist, even though his own life held far more bitterness than the audience ever knew. Anne Seymour as Mrs. Stevens. Anne Seymour, born on September 11, 1909 in Manhattan, was the seventh-generation descendant of an Irish theatrical family with the arts flowing in her blood. In 1955, at the age of 46, she appeared in The Honeymooners as Mrs. Stevens, a supporting character with a tough but kind demeanor, leaving a strong impression on audiences despite her brief appearance. With a powerful voice and dignified presence, Seymour portrayed experienced, resilient women with great depth, enriching the everyday world of this legendary sitcom. Anne Seymour's real life, though glamorous on the surface, hid unexpected tragedies. Coming from a famous but strict theater family, she faced heavy expectations, forcing herself to live up to success standards early on. Storms continued to hit when both of her marriages ended, the second ending in bitter betrayal, leaving Seymour with deep emotional wounds. Her relationship with her daughter Elizabeth also grew tense, pushing her into extreme loneliness more than once. Seymour's career was no less turbulent. She became stuck in the mold of strict mothers or authoritative women, making it difficult for directors to offer her breakout opportunities, even though her acting talent had been proven on Broadway and through many famous films. The pressure of her career, combined with family fractures, gradually eroded Anne's mental health, especially as she entered old age and began battling heart disease, struggling for years in quiet solitude. On December 8, 1988, Anne Seymour took her final breath in Los Angeles at the age of 79 after prolonged heart failure. Her net worth was estimated at about $500,000 USD, mostly accumulated through decades of tireless dedication to the stage and television. She left behind the image of a strong, talented actress who also carried many scars on her soul. John Holland as Tonico. John Holland, born Harold Boggess on May 16, 1908 in Fremont, Nebraska, was a multi-talented artist who could both sing and act with a calm demeanor and a uniquely captivating voice. In 1955, at the age of 47, he appeared in The Honeymooners as Tonico, a supporting character who, though appearing briefly, impressed audiences with his warm, deep voice, adding a unique color to the everyday portrait of this famous comedy. John Holland also made his mark on the Broadway stage with Peter Pan and in memorable films such as My Fair Lady and Chinatown. However, John Holland's private life was marked by much instability. 3 marriages, including a second that ended in painful regret, left him with lingering feelings of failure and loss. Even though he always tried to maintain good relationships with his children, Holland could not escape loneliness as he watched friends, colleagues, and loved ones gradually leave, leaving behind a void that was difficult to fill in his later years. His health also deteriorated as he aged, leading Holland to gradually retreat from the stage and television. The brilliance of his golden days faded, giving way to a quiet, withdrawn life, although he never fell into bad habits or scandals. This silent isolation cast a shadow over the final chapter of his life, making the image of an artist who was once full of energy become fragile and filled with reflection. John Holland passed away on May 21, 1993 in Woodland Hills, Los Angeles, at the age of 85 of natural causes. His net worth at the time was estimated at around 400,000 USD, mostly saved from his long career on stage and screen. Ned Glass as Teddy Berman. Ned Glass, born on April 1, 1906 in Radom, then part of the Russian Empire, now Poland, was a distinctive actor with a small frame, bald head, a characteristic nasal voice, and a uniquely shy presence. In 1955, at the age of 49, he appeared in The Honeymooners as Teddy Berman, a supporting character with a strong personality, bringing realism and a streetwise feel to the signature New York backdrop of the show. From the Broadway stage to major films like West Side Story and Charade, Ned Glass always left audiences with a lasting impression thanks to his natural, sometimes harsh, sometimes humorous acting style. Behind the spotlight, Ned Glass faced plenty of pain. Growing up in a poor Jewish immigrant family during the Great Depression, he had to struggle from vaudeville stages to movie sets, carrying the burden of survival and social prejudice. 3 marriages, 2 of which ended in divorce, left wounds that were hard to heal, and his relationships with his children were often tense and distant. The relentless losses, especially after the suicide of his first wife, Kitty McHugh, left Ned Glass with a lifelong sense of guilt. Though he did not fall into addiction, his health gradually weakened over the years, along with the pressures of earning a living as the film industry kept changing, forcing Ned to take on many small roles just to get by. All of this caused his spotlight to fade in the later years of his life, leaving behind the image of a devoted artist burdened with loneliness and regret. On June 15, 1984, Ned Glass passed away at Encino Hospital in California at the age of 78 after a long illness. His net worth at the time of his death was estimated at around 300,000 USD, mostly from decades of persistent work on stage, film, and television. Jim Backus as Gangster. Jim Backus, full name James Gilmore Backus, born on February 25, 1913 in Cleveland, Ohio, was a multi-talented actor with a distinctive voice and a classy New England style. In 1955, at the age of 41, he appeared in The Honeymooners as Gangster, a supporting character with a tough appearance, adding dramatic flavor to the comedy episodes centered on everyday New York life. Audiences may also recognize him from countless other roles, including the voice of Mr. Magoo, the father in Rebel Without a Cause, and especially the wealthy gentleman Thurston Howell III in Gilligan's Island. But behind the spotlight, Jim Backus had to endure deeply painful years. He suffered from chronic depression, which quietly eroded his mental health and heavily affected his only marriage, leading to its collapse after many storms. With no children to share his burdens, Backus fell into isolation, though he still found some joy in his work and friendships within the industry. His career, though brilliant with hundreds of roles across television and film, was overshadowed in its later years by illness and personal sadness, making him feel increasingly adrift. In particular, Parkinson's disease attacked his body in the late 1970s, making it difficult for Backus to continue acting and forcing him to withdraw. He tried to make a comeback in a few projects, such as the Gilligan's Island reunion films, but his declining health allowed him only a few short lines. In his final years, he mostly lived quietly, relying on the care of close friends. Jim Backus died on July 3, 1989 in Los Angeles, at the age of 76, due to pneumonia complications after many years battling Parkinson's. His net worth at the time of his death was estimated at around 1.5 million USD, mostly thanks to the enduring success of Gilligan's Island and other legendary television and film projects. The Tragedies of the Honeymooners cast members are not just backstage stories, but a reminder of the price of fame. From heartbreaking losses to battles with illness, they left behind a timeless legacy. Who among them do you think had the most memorable fate? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to follow for more fascinating stories.